tragic. Good morning, everybody. There's two aspects of the challenges that we are facing, and each are as important as each other. One is the response, and one is the recovery. And I can assure Queenslanders we remain laser focused on both right across a large area of Queensland. We are dealing with a part of Queensland spanning hundreds of kilometres with several millions of people. We want Queenslanders to stay connected. If you live in an area where you know it is subject to either river flooding or creek flooding, we're urging you to stay connected, have a plan in place, and make sure that you put your safety first and foremost. Disaster declarations have been declared in a large part of this area, but adding to Gold Coast, Logan, Sunshine Coast, Moreton and Brisbane is now Toowoomba, Ipswich and Lockyer Valley. So I'm going to start with those areas of concern, and I want to start with the Lockyer Valley. It's a major area of focus for us right now. A very serious storm cell is moving in that area, and overnight there were door knocks in areas like Laidley and Grantham, two communities that are no strangers to flooding, and they have proven time and time again what a resilient part of the world that is. Emergency alerts were issued, and we are maintaining that connection in that area. We have swiftwater rescue teams in place, and the door knocking which was undertaken overnight. Ipswich remains another area of watch point and major concern for us. Major flood warnings exist for both the Bremer River and Worrell Creek. Rosewood is currently experiencing flooding, and that's expected to move downstream to Ipswich throughout today and tomorrow. Please keep up to date with these warnings. And the disaster.qld.gov.au website is a great single point of truth, which also has those local government flood and creek overlays as part of it. I want to turn to the Sunshine Coast hinterland, where a watch and act alert has been issued as a result of experienced intense rainfall overnight and into the morning. We saw flash flooding, and an example was at the Yandina Caravan Park, where there were evacuations, including via swiftwater rescue, and those residents taken to Nambour Showgrounds. There are some access issues in that local area, and as always we ask people to stay connected and put your safety first. Turning to Logan, major flood warnings are in place for the Albert and Logan rivers. Door knocks have occurred in these areas, and it is crucial because telecommunications remains a challenge in some parts of this area, and on the back of that it's essential we do everything we can to get door to door to make sure that these Queenslanders are prepared, as they always are, and that they are able to deal with any challenges that come through. I want to reflect on the impact to Brisbane, because I know some intense rainfall throughout the night did see some flash flooding in some of those areas. We've been closely watching Enoggera Creek overnight and into the morning. We've seen door knocking in some low-lying areas. We've seen work in Burpengary, in Oxley Creek, a number of areas in the greater Brisbane area. It's a developing situation, and as with these weather systems, the number one thing you can do is have a plan in place, stay connected, know your evacuation route, know where higher ground is, and prioritise your safety first and foremost. To give you an indication of the response and scale of the operation, in the last 24 hours, there's been 3,676 calls to help for the SES. That is the largest 24-hour period in the history of Queensland State Emergency Service. I want to thank every one of them for the work they did, every single one of them. They've been out in force in such a wide range of communities, and they've made a difference. And we're grateful for their work. A little later today, some SES volunteers from South Australia, the ACT and Western Australia will be arriving. And as we always see in disasters, mates helping mates, states helping states, they'll make a world of difference when they arrive. The Queensland Fire Department did a power of work overnight. Deputy Commissioner will address you soon, but I'm talking about swift water rescues, people saved from their homes, trapped from vehicles, and the way that the Queensland Fire and Rescue Service performed their task across a range of areas was equally superb. Queensland Police continue to go over and above. Door knocking has been undertaken and continued in the areas that I spoke about. But I also want to reflect on some of the door knocking and some of the work in places like Moreton Bay, parts of the Gold Coast. And I refer to some of the work of the local community there at Tallabudgera. To every one of you, thanks for looking after your neighbours and looking after your mates during a difficult time. There are some telecommunication black spots, and we have prioritised working with those telcos to get sites back online, and we've done everything from pre-positioned generators for some of the major towers, but there still remains a large number of people without telecommunications, and I'm mindful of how important that is, particularly when you're dealing with evacuations and the need for people to be connected. And I want to point to the magnificent work of our emergency services who have been able to do that despite many telecommunications black spots. Queensland Marine Rescue has been involved in transporting emergency services patients and indeed Energex crews to some of the islands, and they've been involved in medical transports which have been vital for people, and we thank them for it. To our friends at the Australian Defence Force, we have seen the Bushmasters arrive at Mount Tamborine and the way that that lifted the spirits of that community. We've seen them in Beechmont. To all of you, in the way that you've helped get road access to a community that was cut off only a little more than 12 months ago after the storms on Christmas. Your presence so early has made a difference. There are a number of challenges, and I have to start with electricity. In the past 24 hours, Energex has reconnected around about 140,000 Queensland homes and businesses, but there's still over 200,000 without power. And I want to speak to those 200,000 people today. I understand how much this has impacted you and the impacts on food, your family, your mental health, your ability to be able to stay connected. Those crews are working around the clock, and their priority, first and foremost, is to try and get this state back on its feet. Many of them themselves without power, but I'm mindful how much the impact of not having electricity means on families, and I'm mindful of how you're having to go over and above to charge a phone, get food for your family, try and somehow bring some normality in a really difficult time. And we assure you that getting power reconnected is at the top of our list right now. To give you an indication of some of the work in the challenges overnight, there was the possibility of flooding to a key substation, and that was at Nudgee. And the way that we had Energex crews, SES, Road Tech, Council, and the way that they protected that valuable asset That was the difference between another 100,000 people being without power this morning. Challenging times, but some really good work on that preemptive protection. I want to turn to Harvey Bay because it's been a very difficult 24 hours for Harvey Bay. Whilst the weather conditions are starting to look a little better, we urge that community to obviously stay connected. We have SES and Queensland Fire Department on the ground at the moment doing a couple of things. First and foremost, helping with damage assessments. And we, as yet, don't know the scale of the damage, but we do have intel on the ground to suggest it is significant. I have asked the Police Minister, Dan Purdy, to go and personally be on the ground. He arrived there early this morning, and he's working with those agencies to make sure that magnificent community gets all the help it needs as we shift from response to recovery in a big way for the people of Harvey Bay. The Harvey Bay Hospital is open, but I'm mindful there's many challenges, including some supermarkets that were inundated, and food supply will be an issue that is a major focus of ours as well. I want to step through some of the key state government services across the impacted area and assure you that we will continue to communicate in real time as we find out things that you can plan your life as you move to that phase, to that recovery, to trying to get back to normal wherever you can. Today, we've had 198 state schools reopened. I can report that 27,500 children went to school today across those nearly 200 schools. 463 state schools remain closed. 259 independent and Catholic schools remain closed. I want to assure parents that getting your kids safely back to school remains a priority for us, and I'm mindful that that's the difference between a police officer, health professional, someone working at the supermarket, someone working at the petrol station being able to go back, serve their community and earn a living. So making sure that we do that is right at the top of the mind. We've worked with principals and the local QBuild staff on the ground to make those assessments to ensure that when it is safe for kids to return, they will. And I want to thank the work that those people did on the community. There will be further damage assessments done to some of those schools, some without power, many with other complications, but they will be working around the clock to bring them back on. Tomorrow's schools closure, again, that school closures website is a live website, but by 5 p.m. again today, you will know the schools as of tomorrow, and we make sure that gives as much time to as many people as possible to be able to get that information to get back to school. And obviously, principals will always make a decision in the best interests with the information to hand, but we're giving every opportunity for people to have that planning to send their kids back to school in a safe way. Turning to transport and roads, we've seen a big improvement in the number of traffic lights that are operational. We've still got about 1 in 5 that are out throughout many of the parts of those heavily populated areas. But we have seen that climb back to normality on the roads, and despite the challenges that we've seen with the flooding, more and more roads are getting opened as well. The QLD traffic website is a really good point where people can go there and have a look. Alternatively, you can go to the disaster.qld.gov.au website, but that QLD traffic website is also there to serve people. Public transport, today I'm asking people to make sure you stay mindful of the TransLink website. I know people often use that already, but that will be where notices about services are being updated constantly updated throughout the day. So I'll give you an example. I'm going to start with buses. We are getting some services up and running today, and I want to thank right across that area those bus drivers, the people who do the programming, all of the local governments that play a role in what they have done, and all of those private companies. So we had 19 high-frequency bus services that were mobilised this morning in Brisbane. Some buses are on a limited timetable elsewhere, of course, and there remains no services on the Gold Coast, Ipswich, Logan and across the Lockyer Valley. Trains. We've now cleared 700 kilometres of train tracks to get cleared and certified for use. There will still be some disruptions, and I'm urging people again to check that Translink website, but there were those services in operation and trying to allow people to get back to work where it is safe for them to do so. Turning to aviation, Sunshine Coast, Brisbane, Gold Coast and Toowoomba's Wellcamp Airport are all open, and flights are resuming. And again, we urge people to talk directly to their airline that they're flying with, but as of right now, all of those airports are open. Freight. The M1 is open. There was an issue south of the border, but it's opened, and that is a really key link in getting freight. And I'm mindful that supplies are low in many communities, and getting fuel and food is critical. And this freight supply route is very important to that. Turning to the waters, and the Port of Brisbane is planned to commence operations today, and that's equally good news for supply. To the Bay Island ferries, also planned to commence today. Now, that's primarily to facilitate recovery operations, but another step in the road to recovery for those Bay Island communities who bore the first wave of the cyclone. Turning to health and hospitals. All major Queensland hospitals remain open. Elective surgeries have restarted today at many hospitals. If there are issues, individual patients will be contacted directly, but I have to thank those health staff. A couple of nights ago, there were 2,000 of them who slept at hospitals to be able to have emergency services, emergency department operating. There's a great debt of gratitude, and we'll be continuing to communicate that to them. To water and dams, we've seen some falls into the catchment areas. SEQ Water will be updating Queenslanders a little after midday today. So turning to the road to recovery, that important step from response to getting this state back on its feet. The Queensland Fire Department have already conducted 741 assessments about damage. Work is well and truly underway already at Harvey Bay. The first of the hardship payments will be made, and this is in partnership with the federal government, and it's driven locally by the councils, but it's in partnership with the federal government. So the first wave, and I stress the first wave, Gold Coast, Redlands and Logan. So that's payments of $180 per person, $900 per family that are impacted. But let me be really clear, that is the first wave, and other impacted areas will come on. And we will make sure that as we go from response to recovery, Queenslanders are given every opportunity to return life to normal. And that's just one small way that governments can help people get back on their feet. There will be others, and there will be other areas that are eligible. Community hubs will be established starting in the hours ahead. They offer face-to-face support, somewhere to go if you're having strife with your insurance, if you don't have documentation, if you're not feeling well and you just need to talk to someone. Those community hubs do a power of work, and I saw how effective they were in places like Cardwell and Ingham and Townsville, just as a single point where people can go and know that they'll be listened to. And we will be standing those up and making those announcements very, very shortly. Turning to waste and that important rubbish collections. Commendations to the local governments who began collecting waste from yesterday, and it's underway in earnest again today. I know that some councils are looking to extend the ability for people to go to the tip and remove some of the costs and some of the hours, and I urge you to make sure that you stay connected locally with that as well. And now, before I hand over to Sue from the Bureau, I just want to make a final message to Queenslanders. Today still remains a day that could present some challenges with some predictions of heavy rainfalls in some parts of the southeast. We urge you to stay connected, prioritise your safety, and know that we will make sure we do all we can to give you every chance to be safe if you are in those communities. To the other Queenslanders outside of those areas, we understand how important it is that you get back on your feet. And there will be different Queenslanders who have been impacted differently. Some in a small way, others in a massive way. But every Queenslander, every single Queenslander counts, and we will make sure that our focus on ensuring that we go from response, which is underway and still underway in some places, to recovery, which will be different people at different points, remains our focus. There's been a large number of people impacted across a large area. Every one of you means something, and we'll continue to make sure that we go from response to recovery and we get the state back on its feet as quickly as we can. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Premier, and good morning, everyone. As you heard from the Premier, today is another challenging day for South East Queenslanders. In the last 24 hours, we have seen very significant rainfall across South East Queensland, and of course this has led to flash and riverine flooding across our areas. Earlier this morning, we were tracking thunderstorms around the Cherbourg, Somerset and Lockyer Valley Council regions, in which we're producing 50 millimetres of rainfall in an hour. And we did see totals up to 140 millimetres in 3 hours in those thunderstorms. I'm pleased to report that the thunderstorms have now eased and the rainfall rates have dropped to a more regular 10 millimetres an hour or so. However, the risk is not over. We have a severe weather warning remains current for southeast Queensland areas, and it extends from Gympie, or to the north of Gympie, I should say, down to the Queensland border and westward to include areas of Toowoomba and out to Goondiwindi. So what do we expect across this severe weather warning area? Well, a continuation of very heavy rainfall, which at times can be intense rainfall leading to dangerous and life-threatening flash flooding. Typically, 6-hour rainfall totals across this area are expected to be in the range of 80 to 120 millimetres, but totals up to 150 millimetres in a 6-hour period is not out of the question. Most importantly, severe weather warning. It does highlight an area where more intense rainfall is possible and the increased risk of dangerous and life-threatening flash flooding. This area includes Brisbane, the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast areas, including Ipswich. So we saw significant flooding over the past couple of days and continuing in the overnight period following what was some rather intense falls through the overnight hours. I'll step through now where that major flooding is occurring. As the Premier said, we've got major flooding happening in the Bremer River and Worrell Creek. We are expecting more widespread flooding in that catchment, leading to major flooding at Ipswich, with the river levels expected to get to the major flood level through Monday evening and rising further to around about 12.35 metres in the overnight period Monday into Tuesday. Also, out in that catchment area, in the Brisbane River catchment area, Laidley Creek is at the major flood level. Very heavy rainfall was observed over that catchment area in the overnight period, where we had falls of 150 to 250 millimetres in that small catchment, which led to rapid rises, which are continuing to occur now. Flooding, as the Premier has shared with you, is also occurring in the Logan and Albert River catchments, with major flooding occurring at Bow Desert in the Logan River, with further rises expected through Monday morning, and river levels are expected to peak later Monday morning around 10.3 metres. In the Albert River at Beenleigh, major flooding is also occurring, with additional upstream flows expected at Beenleigh later in the day, where river levels will rise further to a major flood peak. Now, these flood peaks are all conditional on the rainfall conditions that happen over the next 6 to 8 hours. So additional heavy rainfall over those catchments, which are in the severe weather warning area, may elevate these levels higher than what the current predictions are. However, there is a lot of water on the ground, and recession of these rivers will take some time. In addition to that, there are a sequence of minor to moderate flood warnings right across the southeast Queensland area where we have a severe weather warning current, and in particular the Upper Brisbane River, the Stanley River, the Sunshine Coast creeks and rivers, and similarly on the Gold Coast creeks and rivers. In particular, the Brisbane River, we've seen significant flooding in the Brisbane creeks following that overnight rainfall, and we are expecting once again Tuesday morning the Brisbane River at Brisbane City may reach on the minor flood level on the Tuesday morning high tide. In regards to rainfalls over the last 24 hours, and they have been significant. Some of the most significant falls we have seen is 433 millimetres at Diamond Creek on the Sunshine Coast, 410 millimetres at Woongawallan, inland from the Gold Coast, and 340 millimetres at Mount Cootha in the Brisbane area. And that's alongside many reports of 300 plus millimetres in the Brisbane metropolitan area. Just to give you an understanding of the intensity of some of those rainfalls, at Kingsholm, we had 207 millimetres recorded in 6 hours. To around 9-10 o'clock this morning. So that's significant rainfall. I just want to stress, we are still in a severe weather warning, and there is still significant flooding occurring throughout southeast Queensland. The situation does remain ongoing. We are still forecasting an easing in the weather later Monday afternoon, but the flooding will continue. So I ask residents of southeast Queensland to remain vigilant and keep up to date with the latest warnings. Thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to start by confirming that we still have not had any loss of life as a result of this event, which is fantastic given the conditions and very pleasing given the conditions that our emergency services have been operating in, and can I thank the community for listening to the emergency services and staying connected. I'm really pleased to announce that the police have located a missing 18-year-old male person from Logan safe and well this morning following a search and rescue at Logan Reserve overnight. Can I please really thank the public for their assistance in providing information to police. Overnight, we did see significant rainfall resulting in flash flooding and some riverine localised flooding across the southeast, including Sunshine Coast, Lockyer Valley, Moreton Bay, Brisbane, Logan and the Gold Coast. Can I just thank all emergency services overnight. It was an extremely busy night overnight, and we saw a lot of rescues and calls for assistance, both to police, fire and and SES. I can confirm that police, SES and fire, we have our resources pre-positioned right across the southeast, and we are prepared to continue to respond to any incident that comes up as a result of this weather event. In addition to the resources we already have pre-positioned, we have an extra 249 police officers today out and about in the community and deployed across the affected areas. We have 117 officers that arrived from the far north of the state to help their colleagues in the south, deploying right across those affected areas today. And as the Premier indicated, we have a further 107 SES personnel arriving today from interstate, as well as the ADF resources that we already have deployed across these areas. I'd like to address Lockyer Valley, and Laidley is experiencing, particularly around the CBD and some residents, some significant flooding. We have heard that businesses and homes are already suffering some impacts in those areas. All the at-risk homes, Laidley and surrounding suburbs, including Rosewood, Forest Hill, Grantham and Glenmore Grove, have been door knocked by police during the evening, and these door knocks will continue as we need to provide further information. A disaster declaration has been put in place this morning for Toowoomba, including Laidley and Lockyer Valley, which does give those police the additional powers to undertake those door knocks and or control movement in and out of those disaster areas. Further rain is expected to move into these areas, potentially bringing further flooding later today. There are 2 emergency alerts in place for Lockyer Valley and Laidley. We are expecting the Warrego Highway to remain closed for some time, which will impact the roads across this area. So we have deployed additional resources into this area and pre-position these resources so that regardless of what roads are cut off, we are able to respond, whether it be from the west or the east or the north. And we've already put those resources in place, including 20 additional Queensland Police staff, including additional Water Police staff. And then this morning, the ADF, we've liaised with them and we've asked them to deploy 10 high clearance vehicles and their staff into the Lockyer Valley area to ensure that our emergency services have access should we have any areas cut off. Significant rain is also continuing or expected to continue in the Ipswich area, as we've heard from the BOM. And this morning a disaster declaration was also put in for the Ipswich disaster area, providing police and emergency services those additional powers if required. We are monitoring the Bremer River for any risk of inundation to the surrounding properties, and we have already door knocked a lot of those at-risk areas, including Bundamba and North Burvale. Resources, again, have been pre-positioned in around the Ipswich area to enable us to respond, and there is 1 emergency alert in place for the Ipswich area as we speak. In addition to that, we've put an additional 45 SES personnel pre-positioned into the Ipswich area. In Logan, there are 2 emergency alerts in place for Logan, including Tamborine, Cedar Creek, Wolfdean, Windaroo, Mount Warren Park, Beenleigh and Eagleby, along with Greenbank, Newbeth and Forestdale. As we heard from the Bureau, a flood warning is in place for the Logan and Albert rivers, and door knocking in the Eagleby, Beenleigh, Bannockburn areas has already taken place, in addition to the 320 residents that we've previously door knocked last week in the Albert River area. Reports overnight in this area indicate 8 vehicles have been impacted by floodwaters and at least 1 home. We received 392 SES calls for assistance overnight just in this area alone. As we're aware, in the Sunshine Coast was also a busy night for our emergency services, and an emergency alert has been issued for the Sunshine Coast hinterland area for the intense rainfall that has the potential to cause flash flooding. So please do not drive in this area unless it's safe to do so. Once that intense rainfall abates and you are able to drive safely on the road, please do so. Police did assist 12 residents to evacuate last night from the Yandina Caravan Park, and these residents have either gone to the Nambour Showgrounds or have chosen to stay with family and friends. SES responded to 54 calls for assistance on the Sunshine Coast area last night alone. In the Greater Brisbane area, police assisted evacuations along with our other emergency services from a number of houses and vehicles. We have emergency alerts in place in the Greater Brisbane area for Oxley Creek, watch and act for flash flooding. And door knocks have also been conducted in the Oxley Creek area to ensure that all those residents who are potentially in an at-risk area are aware of their risk. And can I just ask for all people across the southeast corner, please go on to your council dashboards. That information is being updated continually, and it's linked in through the disaster.gov website, and be aware of your risk and have a plan in place. And if emergency services come to your door knocking, please listen to them and be prepared to move. I'd like to finish just by saying more rain is coming. Apart from the rain we've seen this morning, we've heard the Bureau talk about the risk of further rain through that severe storm warning. If you know your area floods, please be prepared and stay up to date with our warnings. Please know your risk, understand the conditions, and do not undertake risky behaviour. Please do everything in your power to keep you and your family safe. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and I can confirm, similar to Queensland Police, Queensland Fire Department is in dual operations at the moment in both response and recovery. Overnight, in addition to all the other calls that we get as a service, we received 120 calls for people who required assistance from water-related rescues. And of those events, we relocated and rescued 35 people through the night up until 7:30 this morning. Those rescues have occurred right across the southeast corner from Sunshine Coast right down to the border out to Scenic Rim, Ipswich and the Lockyer Valley. I'd also just like to highlight the immense, incredible effort that our Swiftwater firefighters did last night. Our Swiftwater firefighters undertake the most serious events in terms of rescuing people, and it's probably one of the most challenging and dangerous things we do as a fire service currently. And last night presented a number of challenges, including a lot of areas in which these firefighters undertook these rescues were in areas where there were no electricity, no street lighting, no housing lighting. So they did an incredible work last night relocating those 35 people. To give you an understanding of the ingenuity of the team this morning at Palmwoods were presented with an expanse of water 300 metres wide, where 2 people were located on top of vehicles, and they used a drone to check the stability of the water, the flow of the water, obstacles in the water to safely traverse that 300 metres and bring those people to safety. So I wanted to highlight the great work of our Swiftwater firefighters. We also want to highlight that this response is not over, and we've got Swiftwater technicians, 140 right across the southeast corner, including, as Commissioner Shalepi said, in the Laidley and Lockyer area. We also want to acknowledge the work of our Rural Fire Service volunteers who have been out yesterday and again today, out in their own communities looking for assistance opportunities to help the local people recover from this event. And they are certainly active up in Harvey Bay at the moment with fire and rescue damage assessment teams, assisting Harvey Bay get back on their feet and assisting with washouts as we speak. So in closing, I'd just like to say thank all the members of Queensland Fire Department, those who work in the back room as well in all our operational centres. We've been here right from the start of this event, and we will certainly be here at the end through the recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Over to you. Chris, good day.
Hey, Premier, with 19 dams spilling over, what is the impact on homes around rivers, particularly in those catchments?
Yeah, so all of the local government mapping is up to date, and we thank councils for it. So whether it relates to Brisbane or more broadly, if you go onto the disaster.qld.gov.au website, you can click on your council and it will show you if you are subject to either flooding from a river or flash flooding from a creek. And we urge people to know that. Now, most people do know in Greater Brisbane, indeed the broader southeast, most people do know if they are in one of those areas. But if you don't, take the time, make sure you familiarise yourself, have an evacuation plan, go to higher ground, do all the little things to keep yourself safe.
Do we have a sense of the damage bill yet? We know 0 deaths, but
Yeah.
business.
We don't, Andrew, because it is early days, but I'll make this observation. This event will be a significant strain, but it's the emotional toll that is always the biggest in a disaster, is always the one that should come first and foremost. But there's no doubt there'll be an impact emotionally, physically, financially. Disasters always do test people, but it also brings out the best in people. And I'm determined to make sure that not a single Queenslander is left behind.
On that, the damage bill in the Gold Coast is estimated at $1.8 billion.
Yeah.
So I know you've just responded to that question just before, but are there any early indications, any early projections?
No, Chris, but we'll make sure that we work with councils to get them on their feet, but most importantly with individuals, with communities, with anyone who has been impacted. This will be a significant damage bill, of course, but it'll also take a pretty big personal toll as well. You've got people, some have been out without electricity for 4 days. There's a big impact financially, but there's also a big impact emotionally on that as well. And we're determined to make sure that no Queenslander gets left behind.
I mean, there was some confusion, I think, this morning about schools that were open or not. Do you know, did any retract after 5
Liam.
PM?
Yeah, good question, Liam. What we'll do every day is at 5 o'clock, we'll make sure that the schools put out the information on what's open and what's closed. Now, if in the morning a principal makes a local decision to close a school because they believe that something's changed, either it's lost electricity or it's no longer safe to get there, we'll always back that local principal to make that decision. So they do the assessments, we put them online at 5 o'clock, and that will give the vast majority of people the chance to plan for the day ahead. And on the back of it, today, think about the impact of 27,500 kids getting an education is great, but as important is allowing those parents to be able to go and serve their community, make a living, and try to get their life back to normal as well.
Did you know how many retractions there were?
I don't, but I can get it for you.
There's a catch-22 where you've got some business leaders saying, hey, you're overreacting, you went too hard earlier in the week, but now you've got this situation where people are like, hang on, I thought my kid could go to school, now I can't, because there wasn't a clear decision on Sunday. Are you getting the balance wrong? Well,
we'll continue to give the information that we have and give every chance for people to be able to move from response to recovery. And my style throughout this has been where we have information, we give it to people and we give every individual the chance to make the best decision for them. And sometimes that might relate to a work decision, sometimes that might be a family decision, but every time we've got to give them the chance to be able to do what's right. And I have this overwhelming belief that people do get it right when you give them the information. And, you know, I'll continue to be upfront where I get information. I'll give it the moment we do.
Do you think schools will be going back to education as opposed to, you know, sort of emergency mode where people are like drop their kids off and my kids aren't there?
Well, it will continue, and there will be different areas based on the different parts of the recovery will be at different stages. But that won't just be for schools, that'll be for everything. That's everything from supermarkets to service stations, hospitals to courthouses. There will be different levels of services as it comes back on. But our job is to give every opportunity to try to get people to move from response to recovery and give every opportunity for people to be able to get back, you know, to doing their lives. And safety is always front and centre, of course, as is allowing individuals to make informed choices. And we believe that they do overwhelmingly.
Considering schools are saying they need to be assessed by Q-Build before they reopen, is it the case that many schools, even those with mild damage, may take days to reopen? And do you think broadly the messaging on schools was confusing?
But today, nearly 200 schools opened. Today. Over 27,500 kids went to school today. But there's a long way to go, and there's still a lot more to get back to school. But this afternoon, in a calm and methodical way, principals will go to the school with someone from QBuild, so there's someone who understands building as well as someone who understands education. They'll make a local decision, empowered on the ground, people who know their community. They'll make a decision and do all they can to reopen it tomorrow and get kids back to school in a safe way. And that's always the best model. If you believe in people, you believe in local decision making, always. And I'll always back a principal and someone who knows about buildings to make an informed decision. And then I back parents to make the next decision on whether or not they believe their kids should go to school. And if you do that, you allow people the best chance to move from response to recovery. Because I've seen over the years what happens when governments get bogged down and aren't able to flick the switch from response to recovery. Communities you get a sense of helplessness. And the best thing you can do is try to make sure that as different people come and different communities come on board at different times, you immediately move them into the next phase and you give them help, but you also give them hope. And that'll be what we continue to do for the days, weeks and months ahead.
Schools will have the option of delaying that plan
Yes.
for 1 week from today.
Yeah.
Should the ones who aren't open today, should parents at those schools expect their kids not to do
Yep.
that this week?
They'll make that assessment, but I think that's a very fair comment, Andrew.
This is the second time in 3 years the southeast has been hit by bad flooding. How concerned are you about insurance premiums rising in the area?
Of course, I'm concerned about insurance premiums for every single Queenslander, and I will be prepared to call out insurers who aren't good partners in the short and long term, because I think overwhelmingly Queensland over the years has been pretty good to the insurance industry in terms of we've had large portions of the population covered. If you look over the last decades, there's been a lot of people who've paid a lot of money to the insurance industry, and I think they owe it to those clients to be good corporate citizens in someone's hour of need, and that relates to both ends of the state.
Can I ask why it is that only the Gold Coast, Redlands and Logan are activated for disaster payments as opposed to like Bribey, which obviously is
Yep.
get really bad?
No, good question, spot on. As the applications come in from councils, we immediately push them forward to the Commonwealth. They are the first 3 that have been agreed to, but I assure you those other areas will flow, and they will flow quickly. And we have a view that we continue to push them through to the Commonwealth. And look, overwhelmingly we've had good support. We've had the Federal Minister here from day dot, so I certainly can't complain about her interest in it.
I was just going to say, it's potentially a question for me, so I'll start with Tom, if that's all right. So just, and the question is that you had today the man from the area with Harvey Bay, who's on radio this morning, talking about the warnings again. And so his comments were, look, we had been on the cyclone watch area, we had a severe weather warning a few days earlier. By the time this happened, we weren't. I think the severe warning weather was at 7 a.m, about which time it was already raining. Is that a fair criticism of your guys' approach?
As you're well aware, we've been tracking Tropical Cyclone Alfred for over 2 weeks now, from a tropical low, well in the northern Coral Sea, through the Coral Sea, where we saw it intensify to a Category 4, to then move down to southeast Queensland, and very early identified that it would take a track westward towards the southeast Queensland coast. And from that moment of identification that was a risk for southeast Queenslanders, we've had warnings current. I don't have the exact timeline in front of me, and I can certainly support you in getting that to you, but we went into Tropical Cyclone Watch more than 48 hours before gales were expected on the coast, and then of course went into a tropical cyclone warning within 24 hours of the impacts, gale force winds and impacts on the coast. To complement the tropical cyclone watch and warning, we've been in severe weather warnings, and they have continued for several days. Warning of the threat of damaging winds and intense rainfall throughout the southeast Queensland region. We've continuously spoken about the weather associated with this system, the level of uncertainty with this system, and we've had broad areas under warning. And we've tried to reduce those areas under warning as we've received greater guidance and the appeared threat areas have reduced. In addition to that, we've supported our severe weather warnings with a flood watch. A flood watch went out last Sunday, that's over a week ago, warning of flooding within the southeast Queensland area.
I guess though, it's on a broad perception level, is it specific enough? Do you think the Bureau missed something, or do you think the Bureau operated well?
I feel the Bureau have operated well in that we've had warnings out for this system for several days in advance of the impacts appearing on the coast.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone. See you later on. I thought he was going to come back. That's why I sent you a message. I thought you might have been able to whisper in his ear, don't you know? It was 11:30 or something.
Yeah,
I was
sorry,
pushing.
no.
No. I genuinely appreciate it. We'll get to it. That's good.
Do you guys want the DDS team?
No, you're right. You're right. How's everyone going? Everyone's how's it all right?
Thanks. You got power. Thank you.
Guys, you got power and you got flooded. It's flags. So you can ask me which spot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we got power and we had a little bit of